World News, I'm Lewis Vaughan-Jones. Our top stories. Over 60 people are feared dead after a Russian bomb hits a school in eastern Ukraine. Residents had been sheltering in the school's basement. A former security chief known for his loyalty to Beijing. Hello and welcome to the programme. More than 60 people are feared dead after a Russian airstrike hit a string in the basement of the school in the village of Bilohorivka. 30 people were rescued. The others are thought to have died under the rubble. James Waterhouse has this report.
This was a school in a village called Bilohorivka. Having failed in taking the capital, neighbouring towns like Borodyanka have been turned into lifeless remnants of what once was. It's also the stage for the president's latest address. With region in the south, Ukrainian soldiers launched Grad missiles towards their invaders. There is pleasure, of course, in your work, says Yarmila. We're usually not told what target, simply whether we hit the target or not. The West thinks Putin will double down to achieve his goals which still aren't clear. James Waterhouse, BBC News in Kyiv.
Let's go live now to Lviv in the west of Ukraine and our correspondent Joe Inwood.
Well, about an extraordinary toll that they've taken on Russian forces. They say they've killed thousands and thousands. They were seemingly quite proud about the level of resistance they've put up, and also saying that they are still in touch with leadership. A few other kind of points to... Although one other thing I thought was quite interesting and worth bringing out was a few weeks ago they were talking about how they had maybe days, possibly hours left in terms of their rations, their equipment. They were running out of ammunition. They said, well, actually, that doesn't really seem to be the case. They say they still have food and water and ammunition, probably supplies that will last for longer now. A lot of civilians have left. And so they were suggesting that they may be able to hold out for a bit longer still.
And Joe, tomorrow in Russia is a very significant holiday. Vladimir Putin.
Donbass, we understand the Russians have made advances there. Ukrainian forces been forced to withdraw back into the sort of the countryside, and we've heard that the Russians have nearly taken the entire town. But the crucial one, I think, is Mariupol still. That's the place where it had been predicted.
A staunch Beijing supporter, was the sole candidate in the closed voting process, and his appointment is widely being seen as a move by the Chinese government to tighten its grip on the city. He replaces Carrie Lam after she announced she would not be seeking a second term in office.
Since the beginning of the protest movement in 2019, there's also been more than 100 arrests under the national security law. So this man, his entire campaign, if you like, was relatively low-key. The critics have even said that this wasn't really an election, this was simply a selection process. Many critics feel that John Lee is simply a representative of Beijing. He's obviously backed by Beijing, and some people before the voting began, there were 3 individuals that decided to protest and march along the streets in Hong Kong with banners calling for universal suffrage. Now, there was also a large police turnout. There was far more police than protesters. New chief executive, there's the feeling that Hong Kong is moving once again into a new political era.
Thanks to Danny for that. Right, let's look at some of the day's other news now. Tens of thousands of members of the Philippine security forces have been deployed to safeguard suspected of killing 3 Israelis on Thursday. A massive manhunt was launched after the attack in the Israeli town of Elad. The assailants reportedly used axes and knives. There had been a wave of violence amid tensions over the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound in Jerusalem, where and the president of Zimbabwe, Emerson Mnangagwa, has ordered banks to stop lending with immediate effect in an attempt to stop speculation against the Zimbabwean dollar. The Zimbabwean dollar has lost half of its value so far this year, making it Africa's worst in regional elections. The Democratic Unionists, who want to keep Northern Ireland in the UK, have so far refused to join a power-sharing executive. Sinn Féin's victory over the weekend means, for the first time since Northern Ireland was formed in 1921, a party that advocates leaving
in 1998. But I mean, now you have the prospect of a Catholic who wants a united Ireland as First Minister. I think it's incredibly important to point out, Lewis, this doesn't mean that a united Ireland is round the corner. The majority of politicians are...
Well, what about the issue then of actually trying to get power sharing up and running again? It's this issue of the protocol, Brexit again, isn't it? Could you just talk us through what that is?
Well, if we essentially that the DUP, as you pointed out, a sort of mainly Protestant pro-union party, they say they won't go into a power-sharing arrangement unless the Northern Ireland Protocol, the post-Brexit trading arrangements, are removed or pretty...
Beyond excited and, of course, a little bit scared to become the 14th Time Lord, the Scottish actor who was born in Rwanda and is best known for starring in Netflix's sitcom Sex Education. And that's it from me. I'm Lewis Vaughan-Jones.
Which is offered routinely in wealthier countries. I first became aware of this new coronavirus in early 2020. This has been such a fast-moving story and was relentless. Some of the images I've seen in intensive, to be able to film the very first volunteers to receive one of the vaccines during the trials.
Ultimately, it is science we have to thank for giving us this route.
Our global food system is actually be a catalyst for positive change.
We have to wake up and we have to feed the world. That's a big job.
Can farmers, scientists, and innovators overcome these challenges to protect the future of our food? Join me, James.
Hello, I'm Isaac Bannon, and this is Sports Day live from the BBC Sports Centre. Coming up on this programme, Liverpool blink first in the race trig wherever you look in the English Premier League. Just a few weeks to go until the end of the season. Who will win the league? Who will qualify for the Champions League? Who's going to be the final team relegated? Sunday's matches will have a big say on all of those.
I would think differently about it. It's just I can't see it. But we will see what happens. My problem in the moment is not how City smash Newcastle tomorrow. My problem is that people...
So Klopp's theory will be tested later as Manchester City take on Newcastle, knowing they can pull 3 points clear at the top on Sunday. But the game comes just days after that dramatic extra-time defeat to Real Madrid in the Champions League. They know that 4 wins, though, of Tottenham in the quest for Champions League football next season. They need a win to do that, and host Leeds are looking very nervously over their shoulders at the Premier League's bottom 3. As you can see, it's going well for Arsenal. They're currently winning 2-0. Everton start the day in the bottom 3, and they go back from a disappointing result to claim his 3rd pole this year, ahead of Ferrari teammate Carlos Sainz. Nick Parrott reports.
Welcome to Miami and the Hard Rock Stadium, which has hosted 6 Super Bowls. For this weekend, the car park has been. After doing well in practice, George Russell could only qualify 12th for the race. Lewis Hamilton a more respectable 6th given their problems this season. Championship leader Charles Leclerc bounced back from a disappointing result last time out to claim his 3rd pole this year. Title rival Max Verstappen missed out on pole because of this mistake. But from 3rd on the grid, the world champions Red Bull will still be the biggest threat. Nick Parrott, BBC News.
In tennis, history was made as Tunisia's Ons Jabeur and Jabeur didn't even win a game in the 2nd set. Pegula, who was also in her first WTA Masters final, won that 6-love. But Jabeur responded in style with a 6-2 win in the final set to claim her 2nd career title.
To enjoy myself, I think the conditions were kind of tough from the beginning, but then I found my rhythm, I found everything. My shots, my drop shots, all the style that I wanted to play with was here this week.
That's definitely something I'm really proud of, and I'm glad that I was able to push her and again gives me a lot of confidence because you know, she's one of the best players in the world now, and she was just in a final, and she's been in that situation a lot, so hopefully I can keep putting my...
Zverev now stands in Alcaraz's way after the German beat Stefanos Tsitsipas in the other semi-final. He won 6-4, 3-6, 6-2 to record his first victory on the clay court over the Greek world number 5. Golden State Warriors team were hot as they smashed the Memphis Grizzlies 142-111. And now check out this one-legged shot from Klay Thompson, who bounced back from a pretty poor start to the series. He scored 21 points in Game 3. And not to...
I mean, obviously, you don't want to see anybody get hurt. I'm not even that type of player. I respect everybody, so... I mean, obviously, hopefully we get better. Hopefully he gets better, and, you know, we can see him out there next game, but... No, I don't even play like that, for real.
Lead in the first period, but the Rangers fought back in the second. This goal from Andrew Kopp tying the match 4-4. The Penguins blowing a 3-goal lead, and the Rangers sensing a famous comeback victory was on the card. But the Stanley Cup champions, Pittsburgh, got the...
Hello there. We've got a couple of severe weather stories taking place across South Asia over the next few days. The first one is the southern Bangladesh coastline. Either way, it's going to bring some very heavy rainfall here as we move into Tuesday and Wednesday, perhaps strong winds and also significant storm surge. Meanwhile, it's very hot, though, across the northwest of India into Pakistan. So I think as we head from Tuesday onwards, could be some really hefty downpours there in Dhaka. Around the middle part of the week. It stays thundery as well in Colombo, but the heat continues across the northwest of India and in towards Pakistan.
सच्चाई के रंग से सजाते हैं मुश्किलें कोई हरदम साथ निभाते हैं कल आज और कल में
the fact that people see that in the book, that it's about our shared humanity.
Every time I think about what he saw and what he went through, it makes me feel so sad. You just want to make the painting for him. Sorry.
Extraordinary. Whatever their method, they only had one chance to get that right.
Inspiring arts and culture on BBC World News.
Singapore's the gateway to and around the world.
Relations between Russia and the West have reached a new low.
Join our team and find out what is really going on.
BBC World News America.
Coming up this week.
If there's something strange in your neighbourhood, who are you going to call?
Not that drones are always welcome.
True, and James Clayton's been checking out some of the latest tech designs to take drones out of the sky.
Commercial drones have the potential to revolutionise a load of endless.
Flying a drone can be seriously fun, and there are loads of applications in the world where drones can be used for public good. However, in the wrong hands, a drone can cause...
Britain's second busiest airport have been suspended.
Flights were grounded after drones were spotted close to the runway.
Arrests eventually led to nothing. Tens of thousands of people's Christmases were ruined. And get this, it's used to try to assassinate world leaders.
They thought it was fireworks first, but it was a drone bomb.
President Maduro of Venezuela was targeted in 2018, and a similar attempt was made to kill. D-Drone works with the Department of Defense in the US, as well as airports in the United Kingdom, to spot and take down drones. If you've ever flown a drone, you'll know they're incredibly easy to lose in the air. They're hard to see until they're pretty.
Implement some radar technology to help verify that.
My camerawoman Maxine and I thought we'd try to put it to the test with our own drone. Our plan was to try to fly it low to see if we could go literally under the radar.
We know where it's at, camera's looking for it, I'm trying to find you guys.
How big a scale could you do this?
The beauty of the D-drone system is that we can scale this. So if you want to cover an entire city or state, we can lay out sensors to do so.
You do.
This is the final part of the kill chain. You simply press the trigger, but we're currently in off mode, but if I turn that one step down, it'll jam any radio frequency or RF signals in the air. After that, we can do the full GPS jamming, which will eliminate. Or you know that there's a threat, pull this out of the case, hit a button, and you can start mitigating a drone within seconds.
Such is the importance of drones on the battlefield that there are currently more than 600 of these anti-drones. But like all technology on the battlefield, this too could get into the wrong hands. Drone footage has been used in Ukraine to document potential war crimes and atrocities.
Provide as a necessary step to ensure that good traffic can behave. Almost any conflict over the last half-dozen years has involved drones, and it's a great equalizer in the battlefield from an offensive perspective, but it's also important that drones be able to...
Drone are becoming numbered. As tech catches up with them, it might be more and more difficult to get views like this. All right, Clayton, you show off. We've got a cool aerial shot too, you know.
Are we even allowed to film here?
No idea. Let's be cool.
Could help improve site safety.
I'm not just on any construction site. I'm on one in a remote and barren part of the world, Shetland, where an internet and sometimes there's sunshine. But crucially, there's also wind, a lot of wind. Only 1/4 of the renewable wind energy produced on Shetland is used to power the island. So here at Kerg
Road, just down the valley, we've then got a microwave link which takes that internet connection into the site. And then there's a fibre optic connection to each of the 5G masts. So what the 5G network does is provide a high-speed wireless internet connection, low latency and very high speed. Essentially
connect to the 5G network, and much of his work can be done remotely.
How useful has it been to have Spot on the site here?
Oh, it's excellent for us. It makes our life as engineers a bit easier. Gets into places that we can, or maybe it's unsafe for us to go. Just make reports and then hand it back to the engineers, and we'll work out a plan to try and solve these issues.
But Spot isn't running off the 5G network just yet, because there's been a few stumbling blocks with getting it up and running to full capacity.
Which will convert the 5G into broadband, which will allow more devices to connect to it.
But the concept of what might be possible on the 5G network has spurred further innovation, including getting drones to transmit site footage.
Print off drawings or download things from the office, but now if we have to look up a drawing, we can do it on the fly out on site.
It's easy to see construction as hard hats and the pouring of concrete, but it's clearly no longer just an industry of manual labour.
This is all about future-proofing our economy and making sure that the UK is as good as any other country in the world when it comes to 5G connectivity and all the applications that flow from that, but actually also to try and get a competitive advantage.
Join me, Aaron Hazelhurst, on Talking Business Weekly here on BBC World News.
San Francisco is battling a drugs and homelessness epidemic.
What's it like living here?
Lawless.
Make some noise for man like Canelo.
I prepped for battle. Wrote this while training for a boxing match, but it ain't a hassle.
This is battle rapping. It's a concuff. Doing it off the phone doesn't look that cool.
Our planet Earth fits 1 million times into the sun. 6 months to get to Mars if you take the shortest run.
But going from reading rhymes off a screen to spitting bars on the stage takes a lot of work.
The seats on a spaceship, they don't
10,000 hours. And sometimes it's 100,000 hours, and sometimes it's 10 years. So the idea is we take that 10,000 hours and we cut it down to 10.
You know that I really want to learn how to rap, and I hear that by wearing this and looking at this screen, I'm going to get headband literally reads your mind. It pairs with a laptop to combine your brain's output with what you say into the microphone. I want to embrace the place where we interface. The company claims the data from your brainwaves helps the
Sting, clandestine, betting, petting, belting, jest. Oh, it's gone very strange. Wow, okay.
So what was happening is you were in a flow state. You were listening to the beat, you were inside it, and then you open your eyes and you just went into flow state. And the machine recognized that, so it kept.
The synthesizer came out, the music industry was terrified, and in fact I think one of the organisations, the Musicians Union, tried to ban it on product because they thought it would replace musicians, but it just bred a new format of music. So, you know, the machine,
which is involved in conscious self-monitoring and self-censoring and self-reflection, these parts of the brain are shutting down during a lot of creative behaviors. And so it's almost as if the brain is trying to turn off its monitor.
And the soul, when I play with technology, I try to make sure that it's a support to what I'm doing versus a replacement to the art or the organicness.
With the headset planned for release in July for between $3,000 and $5,000, I am back at Abbey Road. Time is fleeting, goes by quickly, so I record it. I think we were all surprised by my improvement. Whether this is due to skill or software, I'm not quite sure.
Like Kirk, I want to go bolder.
Hey.
I thought by now I would be wiser, but I'm just older.
She's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I tell you what, that's not the only outrageous musical behaviour going on this week, is it, Lara Lewington?
No, are you a raver? I don't know why I've actually asked that question.
Do I look like a raver?
No, I've been...
The rave.
First, it's time to get on a VR headset, some headphones for spatial audio, and a vibrating vest to feel the beat.
Some of my friends, they listen to pirate radio.
I don't know whether I'm expecting...
motion capture, volumetric capture, animation. Some of it's 360 video on blue screen and 3D environments, and we try and seamlessly sort of take you through movement within the scene. Action is to find something that feels intuitive, that's something that maybe uses your whole body and you get it straight away.
Everyone's searching for the rave at once, including the police, and this is what's going on in the station.
Something over here.
Activity was to try and gather evidence to prosecute individuals involved.
Were you worried about glamorising something that was illegal?
Not really, no, because I don't think we glamorise it. I think, and it's not really about the illegality of the event. But
looking for clues at my friend's house and out and about. Remember phone boxes?
I'm naturally feeling I need to walk towards this phone.
Hello, this is Amnesia House. Tonight's massive party will be taking
bass, vibration, and that's really good to build up tension. So when you're outside the warehouse and you're trying to find the entrance, as you get closer you can hear like a doom, 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 and you can feel that. That was really important to me because I remember that feeling of coming up to a club.
You and enjoying the rave and being with people.
Wow, I was totally and utterly immersed in another world there. But it was fascinating to see what an emotive and important time this was for the people who were part of it. It really was a scene that...
Haptics, so we have wind blowing in your face. You, as the user, you don't know it's happening, you just feel it.
You know what to do. Use warehouse party. Amnesia House. This is going to be the big one.
I mean, let's think, 1989, it was all about the Kylie Minogue for me.
And Jason.
True. Tell you what, let's leave it there, shall we? Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.
Bye.
And there's more from the Click team at
Almond butter.
Hello there. Let's take a look at some of the bigger weather stories going on across the globe. A cool side for the Pacific Northwest, British Columbia, with further snowfall over the Cascades and the North Rockies. Now, much of Mexico looks dry and settled on Sunday. We'll see further showers across Central America and that weather front pushing into low pressure systems and their active weather fronts. Now, high pressure brings fine and settled weather to much of northern and western Europe. This area of low pressure still disrupting the atmosphere enough to generate some showers and thunderstorms, mainly across the central Mediterranean over the next couple of days. Here in the Bay of Bengal, this is tropical cyclone Asani, and it's moving towards the northeast. The Indian coastline could bring some heavy rainfall, strong winds and a storm surge there by Tuesday, Wednesday. Meanwhile, the heatwave conditions continue across northwest and southeast China, also for Taiwan. Temperatures, though, in Taipei around 26 degrees, given some sunshine. Some thunderstorms breaking out pretty widely for Indochina, and there'll be frequent showers and storms across Indonesia and Malaysia. This area...
Migrants started throwing rocks and bricks and branches towards the Polish forces.
A week of commemorative events in honour of Archbishop Tutu is well underway all over South Africa.
There's more trouble here in the Netherlands.
Hello and welcome to the programme. First, more than 60 people are feared dead after a
in an airstrike. 60 thought to be lying dead under this rubble. This eastern Luhansk region is now in the centre of the war in Ukraine.
It won't be able to hide in the bunker as there'll be no stone left of it. We will overcome everything. We know this for sure because our people are descendants of those who overcame the Nazis. And we will win again. There will be peace.
Worries are growing for the surrounded 2,000 Ukrainian fighters in the Azovstal steel plant.
Right now, authorities in Kyiv are nervous. Tomorrow, Russia stages its Victory Day. In the past, a celebration of their triumph in the Second World War.
Next, the man who oversaw the crackdown on protesters in Hong Kong during demonstrations over a controversial extradition bill in 2019 has become the territory's new leader. John Lee, a staunch Beijing supporter, was the sole candidate in the closed vote, monitoring all the developments, and has more now on the man who's set to lead Hong Kong for the next 5 years.
John Lee, he didn't have a huge public profile before this selection process. He's best known for his position in the police force. The entire sort of election process was very quiet compared to elections in the past, so much so that critics have even said that this wasn't really an election, this was simply a selection.
Well, given that, was there any sign of opposition to this election?
There was a tiny protest in about an hour before the voting began. There were 3 individuals that decided to protest in 2019. So there's the feeling here that under John Lee, with this new chief executive, there's the feeling that Hong Kong is moving once again into a new political era.
Thanks to Danny with the latest in Hong Kong there. Right ahead of Monday's election. There's been a history of violence during elections, but police say this poll has been relatively peaceful. 4 people, however, were killed on Saturday in a gun battle between supporters of rival mayoral candidates. Israeli police say they've arrested by London, Dublin and Washington to form a government. Sinn Féin, the party campaigning for a united Ireland, won an historic victory. The DUP, who want to keep Northern Ireland in the UK, have so far refused to join a power-sharing executive.
I mean, that was really the case when the Good Friday Agreement ending the conflicts was reached in 1998. But I mean, now you have the prospect of a Catholic who wants a united Ireland as First Minister. I think it's incredibly important to point out, Lewis, this doesn't mean that a united...
Well, what about the issue then of actually trying to get power sharing up and running again? It's this issue of the protocol, Brexit again, isn't it? Could you just talk us through what that is?
Well, if we were goods going from Britain to Northern Ireland.
Well, that was Rob Watson. I'm Lewis Vaughan-Jones, and this is BBC News. Bye-bye.
Hello there. What path it'll take? It could veer a little bit further northwards into the southern Bangladesh coastline. Either way, it's going to bring some very heavy rainfall here as we move into Tuesday and Wednesday. Perhaps strong winds and also significant storm surge day onwards. Could be some really hefty downpours there in Dhaka around the middle part of the week. It stays thundery as well in Colombo, but the heat continues across the northwest of India and in towards Pakistan.
कभी विश्वास बनके दिल में साहस का एहसास बनके उम्मीदों को सच्चाई के रंग से सजाते हैं मुश्किलें कोई हरदम साथ निभाते हैं.
And it's interesting with Russia, when you live in a time when people cannot tell fact from fiction, when lies actually spread faster than facts.
I understand the consequences of my decision.
When the Taliban swept into power last August, Lieutenant General Sami Sadat had just assumed command of Afghan special forces. Now in exile, he said
President Ashraf Ghani fled. Lieutenant General Sami Sadat had just taken charge of Afghan special forces. Afghanistan's youngest general had been commanding troops in the southern province of Helmand. 37 years old, educated in London and NATO military academies. Now he's in exile, for now, watching wars from afar. When you watch the war in Ukraine unfold, does it trigger for you reflections and emotions on what happened in your own war?
Count on their own abilities as well as, taking matters. In terms of political matters, Ukrainians should be mature enough to think about what they can get out from a political discussion with the Russians instead.
20 years.
Our partnership with NATO was strong and it was good until it was not. And there is things that we have learned from NATO, acquired skills, equipment. That was good, but then that was not forever. It came to an end. For other countries, then actually, doing something.
You think the US pullout, the US-led NATO pullout from Afghanistan led the way to the Russian invasion of Ukraine?
Absolutely. I think the pullout from Afghanistan was first in the rest of the world.
You have contacts in Ukraine? What do you say to Ukrainian soldiers like you, who are now working with, not with boots on the ground like in Afghanistan, but working with NATO armies? What do you tell them?
Support from NATO and other countries could come to a halt, so they have to be prepared for that day.
One of your recent conversations was leaked in which you announced, and I quote, as a young Afghan general, I consider it my duty to they don't want another war, whatever they think of the Taliban.
I was planning initially with my friends to give Taliban 12 months and see if they change. Unfortunately, every day you wake up, the Taliban have had something new to do. Their families from good people, from doctors and officers, and says, we've been tortured, we've been oppressed, we've been disrespected, and what are you going to do about it? Or, there's probably thousands of Afghans who are getting these messages. So we need to go back to our country and free our country from the Taliban oppression, from Al-Qaeda and from other groups. We will do anything and everything in our powers to make sure that Afghanistan is freed from this.
They're relieved that they feel, whatever they think of Taliban, but they're relieved at least that there is peace. Would they welcome, would they give the kind of support to your fighting forces that you would need in order to make any kind of advance?
I think if there is an evidence that has shown that directly my forces or myself have been involved in, with the civilians getting hurt, I think that's not true. When the war in Lashkar-Gah began, I have ordered all the civilians to leave the city.
NATO forces, which seem to have alienated and angered many in the countryside.
Of course, war is bad, war is gonna cost, and war is dirty, war is not nice, but you fight war for a cause. You fight for freedom, you fight time that the US was there. I also agree that a lot of Afghans have benefited from relative peace. For example, in today's world, Afghanistan has more educated class young men than we have had ever in the history. We have, this is not peaceless.
But if Afghan history has any lessons, it is that armed groups make progress when they have a stronghold, a sanctuary in a neighboring country. If they have a stronghold, a foothold.
No, we don't. We don't want to have foreigners involved in our war.
After 44 years of war, there are now so many groups at this particular point who say they want to overthrow the Taliban, but they are divided along ethnic lines. They're
others to be, leftists or rightists. We all have seen something great in being together and being united. Certainly our task is to unite the younger political, military, and the business classes together in order
that you were part of. You were part of the last 20 years. What do you say to all those people who feel that you and others let them down?
I tell them that I agree there was corruption. I agree that their politicians has let us down. I tell them that we are not those politicians. We are not corrupt. We want to be.
You too are accused of corruption.
Well, I mean, there's people who talk about, when you become a public figure, of course, people accuse you, and there is no evidence of such.
As well, but right now they are tired of war. And they don't believe that you have the solutions, you and others working with you, that you have the solutions, and they just want to leave. Anyone who can leave has left, as you know, including you and your own family.
You have a camera.
No. You know the anger of people. They feel.
I know people are angry, and they should be angry. And definitely, I mean, I've seen people deserve much better than this. This is why we are trying.
And your generation, educated.
We are not against the Taliban. We are against the way they are governing. Their textbook is wrong for Afghanistan. The people, a lot of those who are Afghans, they are welcome to stay. They're welcome to be, accept the other parts is gone, but the angry part, I'd say, disappointed at this point because of what happened through our international allies, and I'm extremely upset for what.
Thank you.
يعني هيك جربت يصير عمري 40 سنة وفي عندي أهداف بدي أعملها.
أنا من تجربتي أنا مشيت لما وصلت لسن ال40 برضه نفس الشيء زي كنت بفكر زي ما أنت بتفكري وكنت كثير متضايقة بقول يا الله هلا طيب.
Across Ukraine, people keep taking to underground shelters like this as Russian attacks intensify. There's still no end in sight to this destructive war. Join me, Lise Doucette, and our teams across Ukraine for continuing coverage on BBC World News.
On Talking Business Weekly here on BBC World News.
San Francisco is battling a drugs and homelessness epidemic.
What's it like living here?
Lawless. So what will it take to clean it?
Vienna blossomed and became a centre of creativity, but the threats of Stalin and Hitler were never far away.
को सच्चाई के रंग से सजाते हैं मुश्किलें कोई हरदम साथ निभाते हैं कल आज और कल में रहते हैं देश के हथली पतली delicious कल देश के हर पल में रहते हैं
1956 से आज तक LIC हर पल
Mediterranean. Now into Africa, it's a dry story across the north and for much of the south. That is away from the Eastern Cape where we'll see further showers to the Caucasus, around the Caspian Sea, some snow on the higher ground, but heat's building into Afghanistan, Iran, and it stays dry and settled for much of the Levant, Iraq and...
I'm Lewis Vaughan-Jones with a summary of the BBC World News. More than 60 people are feared dead after a Russian airstrike hit a school in the Donbass region of eastern Ukraine. About 90 residents had been sheltering in the basement of the school in the village of Bula.
The regional governor reckons 90 people were sheltering inside when it was hit in an airstrike. 60 thought to be lying dead under this rubble. It's also the stage for the president's latest address.
No evil can avoid responsibility. It won't be able to hide in the bunker as there'll be no stone.
In the Mykolaiv region in the south, Ukrainian soldiers launched Grad missiles towards their invaders. There is pleasure, of course, in your work, says Yarmila. We're usually not told what target, simply whether we hit the target or steel plant.
Right now, authorities in Kyiv are nervous. Tomorrow, Russia stages its Victory Day. In the past, a celebration of their triumph in the Second World War. For Vladimir Putin, it's an opportunity to try and justify what
First Lady Jill Biden has made an unannounced visit to Western Ukraine for talks with her counterpart, Olena Zelenka. Mrs. Biden said the visit on what is Mother's Day in the United States was intended to show support to the people of Ukraine. The meeting turns over a controversial extradition bill in 2019 has become the territory's new leader. John Lee, a staunch Beijing supporter, was the sole candidate in the closed voting process. His appointment is widely being seen as a move by the Chinese government to tighten its grip on...
His entire campaign, if you like, was relatively low-key. The entire sort of election process was very quiet compared to elections in the past, so much so that critics have even said that this
Sunday's election, there's been a history of violence during elections, but police say this poll has been relatively peaceful. 4 people, however, were killed on Saturday in a gun battle between supporters of rival mayoral candidates. And Northern Ireland's 2 rival political parties.
Hello there. We've got a couple of severe weather stories taking place across South Asia over the next few days. The first one is the heatwave conditions returning to the northwest of India, parts of Pakistan. And the other one is this feature out in the Bay, southern Bangladesh coastline. Either way, it's going to bring some very heavy rainfall here as we move into Tuesday and Wednesday, perhaps strong winds and also significant storm surge. Meanwhile, it's very hot, though, across the northwest of India into Pakistan. 50 downpours there in Dhaka around the middle part of the week. It stays thundery as well in Colombo, but the heat continues across the northwest of India and in towards Pakistan.
Welcome to Click. We're outside again.
Sensors to track dangerous...
Control things with my brain.
It's like technology telekinesis, isn't it?
The race is on to decarbonise aviation.
Cleaning up the stuff that comes out of those.
Population growth and fractured supply chains.
But might these shocks to our system actually be a catalyst for positive change?
We have to wake up and we have to feed the world. That's a big job.
Can farmers, scientists and innovators
to clean up this city? Our World, Fixing San Francisco on BBC World News.
A new way of earning a living is emerging in the online world.
Benefiting from a vaccine which is offered routinely in wealthier countries. I first became aware of this new coronavirus in early 2020. This has been such a fast-moving story and was relentless. The NHS is now, it was a privilege to be able to film the very first volunteers to receive one of the vaccines during the trials. It is science we have to thank for giving us this route out of the pandemic. Coronavirus is going to be
stereotypes and taking charge of their futures.
طب اولع القداحه شوي لا اطفيها. شك 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 يم سليمان، شك 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 جوزك وين كان، شك 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 عند الحقله بيقطف خوخ ورمان. هيك يا مهند. يعني يا خولة سيارة واضرب واطرح يا خولة، ما انت حاطه لك مسجل. لا. ما انت حاطه لك فلاش يا خولة. لازم يكون في CD اذا بتحب اغنية معينة عشان الغنية. انا الاغنية اللي بحبها ما راح احطها. تعالوا كرم العالم بالنهار، صوب الشرق صوب الغرب، ويمكن ما في فرق، مش مهم لوين رايحين. ده الخزان؟ ايوه. بدي تشوفوا لي الميه كيف جواته. بحس انها دائما يعني لما يفضل الخزان بينزل ميه عكره. في ترسبات. شوفي فيه ترسبات كيف؟ هلا هاد نظف خلص هيك. اوكي خلص. رحاب هاتي الكلور. هاي وحده شايفه؟ بعتز وافتخر اني اقول لكم اني انا اول موسيقيه بالاردن. انا صممت اشتغل بهذا المجال. اول شيء انه مجتمعاتنا العربيه الشرقيه تمنع دخول رجل غريب اثناء وجود المرأة لحالها في
مختلف أنواع تؤمن أن للمرأة مكانا ليس فقط في السباكة ولكن في أي عمل أو مجال تريده.
ورغم افتقار الأردن للمياه ومصادرها بشكل عام، إلا أن نسبة الأعطال في شبكة خطوط المياه التي تزيد عمر أغلبها.
مساء الخير صبايا. الأسبوع الجاي يكون الغداء عندي الساعة 1. كل الصبايا عضوات جمعية السباكة والطاقة التعاونية بستناكم الساعة 1 على الغداء. كيفك يما؟ بس كيف كنا؟ بطلة شو يعني؟ روحة هبة، رحاب، نايفة، ريان ابن حفيدها، ريان، عفاف، رنا، عيوش، منى. بس هون؟ منظر؟ أحلى المنظر. شوف أحلى المنظر. بس كتير حلو، بجنن. حلو كتير الماء فعلا، اشي بجنن هون. صح. هلا بتقدر تعمل الاشياء اللي ما كنت بتقدريها تعمليها وهم اولادك صغار. هلا خفت المسؤوليه.
هلا بيحكوا لي اللي حوالي لا انه هسه مسؤوليتي زادت.
لا
بدك تتجوزي وبدك تعملي لهم بيوت. طب انا لا. امتى انا وقتي؟
لا
مش شو في خير؟ تعالوا علي. تعال اقعدوا. يا استربا.
ايش
تفضلي.
ليش هيك قعدتي لي؟
اقعدوا.
شوف ايش
سيجارة كفي. الكلب ايش اخباره؟
ايه؟ دار من الكتل، دار من الشدة، من الخير، دار من الصالحة. يا زين اخوي، يا زين خوي.
وانتي شو في اخبار؟ كيف الدوام؟
والله الدوام مرتب من الاخر بدون زي رواتبنا. انا ويدي
انت باليوم 5 ليرات؟ كل نهار؟ يعني ماشي. يعني الأولاد بكره بيكونوا بتجوزوا. طب أنا شو؟ بضل أنا أطارد؟ بدي أعمل شغلي أنا خاص فيي. خلاص هسا أنا هسا خولة عملت شغلها صح؟
طيب نبلش اجتماع الهيئة العامة. بدي يصير في شوية تغييرات يا صبايا. يعني أنا بدي أسس إلي شغل خاص. لازم أكون مش رئيسة. إيش؟
مش حابة أكون رئيسة. خلاص بعدين نناقش هاي الأمور.
لا هلا
لا أنا ما
بصير. لا ما بصير يا حبيبتي. ما أنت هيك إحنا جمعية يعني شو؟ يلا يا صبايا مبروك، نقول مبروك للبنات. في إشاعة عم بتحكي إنه قال في علي شكوى وفي قال قضية عندي بالمحكمة، فبعرفش يا ريت تتحقق من هذا الحكي، وبدي بس حابة أعرف بس.
कल आज और कल में देश के हर पल में, कल आज और कल में देश के हर पल कभी पर देश के हर पल में रहते हैं।
1956 से आज तक LIC हर पल आपके साथ।
لما تقرأ النظام الداخلي في شيء بالنظام الداخلي بيمنع إني أتعامل مع أي مؤسسة أو مع زوجي؟
احنا اليوم اجتمعنا هون عشان نحكي عن أمور جمعية ولوين وصلنا يعني عندنا أشياء كثيرة بمقصد. أنا وياكم أنا معاكم بنقول لكم إحنا الجمعية مش مستفيدين منها إلا المشاكل، فبنحل الجمعية سلمي. يعني طلي خولة مش من الإنسان اللي
لا بعرف إنه ما شاء الله عنها يعني.
بدل ما أدهن هاي عشان ما أوسخ الحيطة هاي عملتها عشان هلا هون شوفي هون هاي بعملها حيطة للتدريب الماهر، وهيك بتطلع البنت واثقة من حالها وكل شيء تمام.
كثير حلو. ألف شو رأيك؟ أمور القانون بتعرفي يعني بصير علينا علامة استفهام، فأنت لك كل الدعم مني أنا كصديقة. حبيبتي الله يسعدك.
هلا ايش ممكن برضه يسأل القاضي؟
هن البنات كلهم كانوا موافقين، كل ما قدرت تثبتي يعني بوثائق وكل شيء كل ما كان أفضل.
لكني لا أحبك. هذا عبادة بردوش علي.
أنا برد
ولا أنت؟
خلاص ماشي بردش أنا. طيب
نعيش حياة غير هالحياة.
بكرة خولة بتدعوكم لاجتماع الساعة 8:30 صباحا. اجتماع هيئة عامة طبعا مشان توقعوا لها على نسيت. آسفة يا جماعة الخربية وبعتذر من الجميع مع احترامي للجميع. السلام عليكم.
أهلا حالي تمام حبيبتي الله يسعدك. ما أحلى الريحة يا صبايا. أنا بدي اليوم ناخذكم في أنا كنتوا بتعرفوا بال5000 تبعت زوجي؟ لا ما كنتوا تعرفوا؟ عامل إنه كنا نلاقي استئجار عندي من زوجي، ما كان حدا معارض إنه لجنة الإدارة مسؤولة عن 5000 استئجار عندي.
كلها الفاضي. شو ذنبي أنا أضل رايح جاي أحط مصاري وأحط وأقيم. من رمضان العام اشتغلنا؟
لا
اشتغلنا شو شيء دخلنا ليرة؟
لا
شيء ما تعبت. أنا بدي أطلع بس تطلع الميزانية وتجتمع اجتماع الهيئة العامة خلاص. رنو ما لحقت مش فاضي له. احنا كمونة بجوز ننحبس.
طب بس هي أنا مش فاهمة مثلا إيش الموضوع هو، بس يعني أنتوا شو دخلكم مثلا إذا هي أنتوا شو دخلكم؟
مش إحنا معها؟ مش إحنا وقعنا؟ مش إحنا وافقنا؟ طب وشو إذا خولة غلطانة القانون باخذ مجراه.
هسا بيني وبينك خولة غلطانة ولا لا؟
في عليها غلط طبعا.
طيب
بس لازم ما وصلت لهون الأمور، لازم نحلت بيننا.
دواش
يا ترى بدك يعني أموت؟
هذا اللي فكرت فيه، هذا اللي فكرت فيه.
ما هو دي لفني مشان اشوف بيه.
لا الفستان العروس ابيض. اشمعنى انت ايش قلتي
شو يعني الكفن؟ رح اعمل مريول ثاني لونه اخضر، حبيت الاخضر انا.
لايش؟
الي لما بدي اطلع شغلي انا مش للجمعيه، شغل انا بدون جمعيه. لما حكيت لك انا لما اكون على 40 حاب تكون الي هيك رونق لي انا.
اوكي خايف؟
لا تخافي، حطي بدك تقدري تلفي الستين، لفي اشوف
على الاخر؟
لفي عادي انه بتقدري خلص.
لا
رجعي او مثل ما كان.
هذه خايف.
ارفع شوي ارفع تخافي، وازني، لا ترفعي رجلك عن كلاب، خلي رجلك كلتش على النص وادعسي بنزين. لا تقني شوي، ادعسي كمان شوي كلتش، بس يلا بنزين، يلا قيم امشي بنزين.
سلمك الحمد لله. في البيت بقطع هيك كويس ولا كيف؟ اللي بمشي قاعدة بقطع؟ طيب بتقدر تروحي مكان تاني يعني؟ والله. هلا اخبارك انتي؟ بتعرفي من وين بحكيكي؟ من المركز. طبعا انا ما دخلتش معاها عشان الجلسه، عشان ما يقولش انه والله هي كانت معها وهي اللي يعني بدها تاثر عليها، فكنت برا بستنى. ولا بس طلعت طولوا، بس طلعت شو بتقولي؟ بتقولي خولة الله يعينك ولا ليش؟ بتقولي قديش هذا بكرهك او حاقد عليكي ولا هو؟ بتقولي بدور كتير بدي أعرفي. صدقت أنا أمتى أعمل هالمركز، خايفة، بس خايف عارفة. هلا أنا يعني ما صدقت إمتى أفتحه، برضو خايفة. الحمد لله. طيب خلص، إذا إجا جوزك خلص روحي هلا وسلمي لي.
تدريب وصيانة.
ما شاء الله يعني جد شيء برفع الراس. أول مسرجية بالصوت كمان.
أول مسرجية بالصوت. مسرجية؟
نعم.
والله إنك.
والمسرجية بالأردن؟
ممكن. ما شاء الله عليك.
رفا تعال شوفي.
تشتغلي؟
أنا عائشة. أنا سباكة.
طب معكيش البزنس كارد؟
لا
لا
بدي سمحتي.
يا حبيت. هاتي
هذا إلي أنا.
شوفي عائشة شهادتها مهمة في المحكمة.
السلام عليكم. هلا. شو رحاب؟
قلبه ما يريد.
مش قصة قلب لا.
ولا عينه مسشوف. أنا ما بحبش حدا يتحكم فيا عايشة.
شو حكيتي إذا جاكي خبر كده بتعملي؟
جذبتك بالماء.
لا عندي كذبتي حالك بالماء قلتي. بدك تفلحي قلتي. طيب اسمعي، هسا اجاني صيني. والعمل بعد ذلك على والعمل بعد ذلك
لا اعطيني بس المي.
لين أخضر. دعاية بسيطة على الفيس، دعاية هون وهون، لا حتى الحمد لله انتشرت وانطلقت. عمرها واحدة منكم غامرت واشتغلت إشي في بيتها؟
ركبت سيفون للمجلة.
ركبت حلو؟
ركبته لحالي يعني.
لحالك يعني؟
جربت
اتقان اكثر. يعني هسه حتى ببيتك باولادك يعني كل شيء بكون عندك مرتب مش زي الزلمه.
شوفي صبايا شو مبدأ عملها، شايفينها كيف نازلة؟ هذا مدخل المي، كل ما نزلت المي بدي أكمل شغلي مع الورشة وإن شاء الله بس يصير معي وقت بحكيكي، أوكي؟ يعطيك العافية. الزيت هذا ما طلع بوقت تلقائي بس لا هي بوقت تلقائي.
خلينا نبلش خطوة خطوة.
اوكي اوكي.
هلا انت اول ما تفوت على المحكمة بس باخذ هويتك وعنوانك وبيسألك في ايه بتعرفي خولة؟ بعرف خولة. شو علاقتك فيها؟
كانت مدربتي وكانت
لانه هو عنده
شركة وبيعرف يجيب لنا الكل اللي بدنا اياه وبأي وقت ممكن يوفر لنا.
والمعدات هاي متوفرة عنده. بس هي بتحكي
ملزم بأي شيء.
بتحكي هذا السبب.
ما بتعرف احسن ما بتعرف.
طيب لا هي فرق قليل، لو بدنا نشتري عدد باخذ كل مبلغ المنحة.
أنا ما بقدر أدخل معها؟ ليه؟
راحتها بالشهادة.
والله؟
ما ترتبكش أو يصير ارتباك أو شيء.
باي.
Could be a cyclonic storm developing in the Bay of Bengal. Should stay offshore of India, though potentially reaching Bangladesh and Myanmar later in the week. Plenty of heavy showers around the Gulf of Guinea, but not too many through the central belt of Africa. Warm and dry for much of rains, and we're looking at hot, dry weather continuing further south. Bye for now.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
देश के हर पल को सच्चाई के रंग से सजाते हैं, मुश्किलें कोई हरदम साथ निभाते हैं, कल आज और कल में रहते हैं देश के हर
to recruit similar parts of our brain as when we actually experience pain ourselves.
Empathy in itself is a very healthy response. So we are literally sharing this emotion with another in terms of empathic distress.
Watch more stories like this at bbc.com/real.
I understand the consequences of my decision. And one of the consequences of my decision
News
News, I'm Lewis Vaughan-Jones. Our top stories. More than 60 people are thought to have been killed after a Russian bomb hit a school in eastern Ukraine. It comes as the US First Lady Jill Biden makes a surprise trip to Ukraine, meeting with the wife of President. Hello and welcome to the programme. First this hour, there are signs Russia is stepping up its offensive in the eastern Donbass region of Ukraine, and there are Zelensky. More on all that in a moment, but first let's get this report on that school bombing. It happened in the village of Bilohorivka in the Donbass region of eastern Ukraine, as our correspondent Laura Bicker reports.
This was our feared dead under this rubble. Russia is stepping up its assault on eastern and southern Ukraine. In Mariupol, they seek out the last Ukrainian fighters holed up in the vast Azovstal steel plant. As a refuge for more than 2 months have been rescued, according to Ukrainian officials. But daily shelling has decimated their once thriving city. The mayor claims those still there are being forced to carry permits to move around, and some men are even being held in camps.
This means that the Russian occupying forces are holding captive more than 100,000 people. They're using them to clear rubble and dead bodies. Our local population...
Families trying to rebuild their shattered lives. 8-year-old Vicky loves it here, but her mum is struggling to forget those harrowing last moments in her hometown.
Planes, missiles, then ships.
Well, we can go live now to Lviv in the west of Ukraine. Our correspondent Joe Inwood is there. Hi, Joe. So we've got a sense there of some of the Russian military efforts in the east. What's your assessment of the state of play there at the moment?
Conversely, up in Kharkiv, to the north of the Donbass, Ukraine's second city, it seems like the Ukrainians are pushing the Russians back. They've taken quite a number of villages on the outskirts and have pushed, we think, the Russians almost out of artillery range of the city. A children's centre on the border with Poland, and she met Olena Zelenska, that's President Zelensky's wife. This was, interestingly, it's the first time that the Ukrainian First Lady has been seen since the start of the war. They had said that her and the children were on a
few weeks. What's the latest we're hearing from the steel plant there?
Well, a really quite extraordinary press conference took place. As hard as it is to believe, 2 of the commanders of the Ukrainian forces there gave a live press conference. It was done in English, and we got their update on how they see the defence of the steel plant. And actually, it was rather surprising. We were told maybe a couple of weeks ago that they had just days to live in terms of food, water and ammunition, but they said they still have supplies. We know that they have a number of wounded down there. They were quite upbeat. I think you got a sense from them that they were very proud of the defence they've put up. They were talking about the number of Russians that they've killed, the number of Russian equipment that they've destroyed, and they said that they would not...
Thank you very much for that roundup and bringing us the very latest from right across Ukraine there. That's our correspondent Joe Inwood. Thank you. And as Joe was just mentioning there, on Monday there will be military processions all over Russia to commemorate the Soviet victory.
It's the final practice for the annual military parade. Victory Day marks the defeat of Hitler's Germany. But this year, Putin's Russia is on. In the run-up to Victory Day, across Russia, organised displays of the letter Z, the symbol of Russia's offensive in Ukraine. From schools to stallions. To the end. They have risen from hell to destroy us, Natasha says. The fascists, the Americans, everyone who is against Russians. But it was President Putin who started this by attacking.
The defeat of Nazi Germany was a glorious moment in Russian history. But today, the Kremlin is using that victory, using the past to try to justify the present. It's mobilizing the patriotic fervor of
in World War II.
This victory, it was for our future. And now we lost our future because of one man, and his name is Vladimir Putin.
Can celebrate the past. It's the future that's uncertain. Steve Rosenberg, BBC News, Moscow.
OK, we're going to go to Hong Kong now. The man who oversaw the crackdown on protesters there during demonstrations being seen as a move by the Chinese government to tighten its grip on the city. He replaces Carrie Lam after she announced she would not be seeking a second term. The BBC's Danny Vincent has been monitoring all the developments, has more now on the man who is set to lead Hong Kong.
There have been more than 10,000 arrests since the beginning of the protest movement in 2019. There's also been more than 100 arrests under the national security law. So this man, his entire campaign, if you like, was relatively was very quiet compared to elections in the past, so much so that critics have even said that this wasn't really an election, this was simply a selection process. Many critics feel that John Lee is simply streets in Hong Kong with banners calling for universal suffrage. Now, there was also a large police turnout. There was far more police than protesters, which is a very different scene compared to what happened in the past here in Hong Kong, when Hong Kong is moving once again into a new political era.
Thanks to Danny for that update. Right, you are watching BBC World News. I'm Lewis Vaughan-Jones. Let's take a look at the headlines. Over 60 people are feared dead after a Russian bomb hits a school in East. His appointment violates democratic norms. Next, Northern Ireland's two main political parties have been urged by London, Dublin and Washington to form a power-sharing government. Sinn Féin, which wants a united Ireland.
Two different visions for this island has shifted, symbolically at least. What do you think it means for Northern Ireland?
Well, it means maybe Stormont will get back together and maybe it won't. I mean, this is what we've been living with for years now, a dysfunctional politicians and dysfunctional...
Carried over the Irish Sea on ferries from Britain undergo new checks when they reach these shores, which is perceived by some unionists as severing Northern Ireland's place in the UK and is disrupting the functions of many businesses. Attempts to make the arrest
with the EU, but we have never taken anything off the table in terms of resolving this issue for the people of Northern Ireland.
While this persists, the DUP said it won't go back into the power-sharing executive, which Sinn Féin argues holds everyone to ransom. It raises new questions over what it says about the choices voters are making for Northern Ireland's future. The party strongly believes in holding a border poll, vote on whether Northern Ireland should remain part of the UK.
There is only one person that can call a border poll, and that
prominence to their campaign. For now, the problem for Sinn Féin is how to translate their victory into real power. Because unless there's agreement between the parties, Northern Ireland remains in deadlock.
Were killed on Saturday in a gun battle between supporters of rival mayoral candidates. A bridge in northern Pakistan has collapsed after a glacial lake had burst and released huge amounts of water into a local stream. Now, this is the moment the bridge collapsed. They have arrested two Palestinians suspected of killing 3 Israelis on Thursday. A massive manhunt was launched after the attack on the Israeli town of Elad. The assailants reportedly used axes and knives. There's been a wave of violence amid tensions over the Al-Aqsa Mosque. He ramped up because mining the earth for precious metals to make new gadgets is unsustainable. That's according to scientists. Global conflicts, like the war in Ukraine, are also causing spikes in the price of materials and pose a threat to supply chains for precious gallium used in medical thermometers, LEDs, solar panels, telescopes, and has possible anti-cancer properties. And indium, which can be found in transistors, microchips and fire sprinkler systems. All the while, the amount of e-waste generated.
Or that those that we have a long life and that they get a second life wherever they can by passing them on. But once they are deemed to be defunct and they need to move into a waste stream, we need to make sure that these elements stay out of landfill that can be brought in that make it more conspicuous and more available and more easily accessed for consumers to get their electronics into the appropriate routes.
Okay, and you mentioned your survey.
The vast majority of people wish that their devices lasted longer, but found it too difficult or too expensive to repair them when minor things go wrong.
Okay, and are we really running out of these materials? Is that true, or is it actually
go round and around into new devices, into the same devices, or being repurposed for other uses?
Thanks to Dr. John Broderick for explaining all that to us. Now, a Nepali Sherpa has set a new world record by satisfied mountaineers and improved tourism in Nepal. Now, if you see much British television, you'll know something about Doctor Who, the long-running series about a time-travelling overlord. And there's been a long series of...
Nice that people receive it, so yeah, it feels good.
Doctor Who's returning head writer Russell T Davies says they've been keeping the news secret since February.
Completely surprised and completely thrilled, and it's so nice to see that cast being recognised tonight. And of course, it was made on a channel that the government's going to...
Ended up studying drama.
Wow, what is this called, Mom?
The Senator.
Today he's up for a Best Comedy Performance BAFTA for the series Sex Education for the third year in a row.
Has made a surprise appearance at a Kiev metro station where he praised Ukraine's fight for freedom. And if you haven't already, do download the BBC News app. And if you are online, get me on social media. On Twitter, I'm at L Vaughan Jones. I'm Lewis Vaughan Jones, and this is BBC World News. Bye-bye.
In the Bay of Bengal, it's been now named as Cyclone Asani, and it's heading into a northwest direction towards the east-northeast coast of India. A bit of uncertainty to what path it'll take. It could veer a little bit further over the next few days. So warnings remain in force pretty widely across the northwest of India for the heatwave conditions there. And for Monday, it doesn't look too bad across the east coast, but the wind and the rain will start to pile in, I think, as we head from...
On the Belarusian side, migrants started throwing rocks and bricks and branches.
Than any other international news broadcaster, we are the leaders in global breaking news.
Buria was a hell.
Behind every headline.
I had this feeling that I'm entering a prison.
Kenya. This is our world.
Put your hands on the corner. I just seen the cops kill somebody, and they were treating me as if I was the suspect.
A series of documentary films that
bound pressure from climate change, population growth, and fractured supply chains.
But might these shocks to our system actually be a catalyst for positive change?
We have to wake up and we have to feed the world. That's a big job.
Hello, this is BBC World News. The headlines. More than 60 people are thought to have been killed after a Russian bomb hit a school in eastern Ukraine. Meanwhile, Ukraine says its forces have withdrawn from the town of Popasna as a heavy fighting continues. Zelenka, Ms. Biden, said the visit was intended to show support to the people of Ukraine. A former security chief known for his loyalty to Beijing is confirmed as Hong Kong's new chief executive. The European Union say his appointment works. This is BBC News.
Global business news from the boardroom or grassroots. Aaron Hesselhurst cuts through the jargon to add
costing billions of dollars it doesn't have. Ukraine's finance minister tells me how bad the damage is and what it means for his country's future. Also, how can the rest of the world help Ukraine get back up on its feet? I'm here in London at the head catch-up with its president to find out how they can help. It's a conflict that is causing huge suffering for millions, and even if the fighting stops tomorrow, the country will have enormous challenges to deal with for many years. In a lot of areas, the economy is struggling to function given so much has been destroyed. Expected to grow a healthy 3.6% this year. But the fighting means it's now forecast to shrink 45%. The fact that much of the workforce has either fled or is fighting the Russian invaders means economic activity oil to the rest of the world, which means its economy is losing even more cash. And all of this begs the question of just how President Zelensky's government can keep the economy going, and how will it fund the widespread rebuilding when the fighting
billions of dollars to rebuild all this later and recover from this war.
So let's pick up on that idea that Ukraine needs billions of dollars of financial support each month just to keep going. How has the economy adapted to the unprecedented circumstances? But Sergei, can we start with this? Can you help our global viewers understand the economic picture, the economic situation that people are dealing with in Ukraine right now?
Our economy is working in very, we could find some different ways how to finance our budget. Either it could be domestic issues of war bonds, or it could be some international support, which we eager and strive to find out how to receive it.
We were able to spend as a government. Those tax revenues were on course to be higher than $30 billion for the first time. What's it likely to be this year? And what does that fall in those tax revenues mean?
Because more than 20% of our businesses are fully closed. It means that we can manage to fulfill our necessary duty as government without international support. Or you know that Ukraine have global leadership position in export of several commodities. Seeds oil #1 in world, corn #4, wheat 5, iron ore 4th place. So because of our food commodities are fully blocked in our harbors in Odessa region. That's why we can't deliver necessary amount of corn towards their custom, make our infrastructure, specifically Western border infrastructure, are more able to receive necessary amount of export-oriented goods towards west of Ukraine.
And Sergei,
is spent only on some very practical Ukrainian needs. First and foremost, it's humanitarian needs of our people. We look at now in Ukraine, we have 7 million people which are internally displaced.
But Sergei, Russia, it's continuing to get billions of dollars from selling its oil and gas to Europe. Sergei, should there be a full embargo on Russian energy?
It's very important and so necessary to do it running with very huge profits. So it's very necessary to block and to find a way how to make for them more problematic to finance their military needs. I am very practical Minister of Finance. I believe that full embargo can make Russia suffer more than it is right now.
And Sergei, correct me if I'm wrong, but Russian gas, it's still traveling through.
Either or not, they want to receive Russia gas. So now we're like a transit countries.
But Sergei, shouldn't your government just make the decision by itself and close those pipelines?
You know, it's impossible to receive this gas and other guys which supply this gas. Our country is just in a transit territory. We can't open this tube and to make this gas flowing in another direction. To just clean this territory from Russian troops and then to make it be more reliable calculation of real damages which we received from them.
Some suggest that Russian...
In that direction, they prepare some draft of legislation in a way that can facilitate this process, facilitate the process of seize, which can help us to seize these assets in...
I'll see you shortly.
कल आज और कल में देश के हर पल में कल आज और कल में रहते हैं देश के हर पल में रहते हैं
1956 से आज तक LIC हर पल आपके
caused tens of billions of dollars of damage, and that number, it's growing every day. The destruction ranges from roads and bridges to factories and apartment blocks. And the cost of rebuilding all of that when the fighting's over. Odile Renaud-Basso, thank you so much for your time. Much appreciated. Odile, can we start with this just for viewers around the world and perhaps the uninitiated? Can you explain what the EBRD does.
So the EBRD is a multilateral countries being shareholders of the bank, and we've been created in 1991 following the collapse of the Soviet Union in order to support the private sector and the transition of public sector, for example, in key infrastructure that will be important for the development of the market economy, private sector companies and so forth.
And this makes you one of the right organizations, if you will, to help rebuild Ukraine then?
In the country, financing projects, but also providing policy support.
And Odile, we're hearing that Ukraine will need upwards of $600 billion for reconstruction.
Grant financing and not only loans, and a sort of exceptional type of Marshall Plan type for Ukraine, a bit like what has been done following World War II in Europe to rebuild the country. You know, the country before the war was engaged in a big reform agenda to improve governance, reform the judicial system, fight against corruption and so forth. This agenda of reform will continue, will need to be implemented. Very important amounts of donor support for Ukraine now in the current juncture to go through the war with military support, but also support to the government. The US have just announced a very important package. It shows that there is a real solidarity and that Western countries from US, Canada, the EU, European countries really understand.
Labour is going through the roof. It is going to make it more expensive. That's another problem Ukraine may face, is it's going to be much more expensive to rebuild.
Yes, indeed, it's going to be more expensive, but also the war has not only an impact now, infrastructure, logistics and so forth, because of the situation in Russia with all the sanctions and the need to reorganize if they want to export to go outside of Russia. So, I mean, this is a big impact for this war, will have a big impact on all the countries in using some of these assets. I think when you have the history of Europe in mind, the notion of reparation calls for sort of alert. I think we need to be aware of that also. So it's
sorry, just for those who maybe don't have a long
impact on Germany, and what's one of the origin of what came with Hitler and Nazism and so forth. So I think that for Europeans, this is a part of the memory, and we need to keep that in mind. Few years, several years, it's clear that, and it depends there again at the level of destruction and so forth, but 7 years. It's very difficult to engage into reconstruction and new investment in a country where you don't know whether...
To a standstill. Is there much that the bank can do to help that all-important sector get back up and running?
So you're right. First of all, this is a key issue, and it's a big source of concern for to find the appropriate response is logistics, because of the situation in the port in Ukraine. Export, I mean, logistics means to export the wheat and so forth are very
and they do it on ships.
There is no ships, and so if you take the train. And the other thing we are trying to do is to develop, to help in other countries in which we intervene, storage capacity, to be less dependent on market volatility, but also increase their own production capacity.
Or are ending business activities there. Well, that's it for this week's show. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget, you can keep up to date with the latest on the war in Ukraine and how it's impacting our global economy on the BBC News website or the smartphone app. You can also follow me on Twitter.
कभी विश्वास बनके दिल में साहस का साथ निभाते हैं कल आज और कल में रहते हैं देश के हर पल में रहते हैं
1956 से आज
High ground of California, the Sierra Nevada region could see further snowfall over the next few days. Certainly some snow for the Cascades and into the North Rockies. Got a new low pressure system pushing into the northern plains of the US, central Canada, but for much of it, also see some showers building into Bolivia, perhaps Paraguay and Uruguay through Monday and Tuesday, and it stays unsettled for southern Chile. Much of Europe is dry. We're under an area of high pressure for the next few days, but still, this area, Bangladesh, through Tuesday and Wednesday, could bring some very heavy rainfall there. Meanwhile, heatwave conditions continue for northwest India, parts of Pakistan. An unsettled, quite a wet-looking picture for the southeast of China, Taiwan on Tuesday. Some downpours developing across Indochina. High pressure starts to build in.
Across Ukraine, people keep taking to under